Good morning and Merry Christmas. Welcome to the DFS Army's First Look NBA Breakdown, brought to you by Fantasy Draft, the home of rake-free daily fantasy sports. I'm CashKeg, and today we'll be doing a game-by-game breakdown using Fantasy Draft for lineup construction and answer any questions you might have on the 5-game Christmas Day slate. It's one of the best NBA slates of the year. But before that, if you're not already following me on Twitch, please give me a follow. Turn on those notifications so you know when we go live. And have a little bit of a stocking stuffer for you folks who have not tried the DFS Army. If you've not tried, we got a 2-day special here. Promo code Christmas will save you 50% off your VIP membership and 20% off every month after that. So again, 2 days only. Christmas Eve, which is today, and Christmas. Promo code Christmas. Get in there. Love to see it. Got a big NBA slate. The 5-gamer. It's a lot of fun. Some strategy on some of these non-late swap sites. And, yeah, should be a good one. What's up, Kanger? Merry Christmas, man. How you doing, brother? Figure we'd knock this booger out, and it should be a fun slate, man. Starts early. Let's head on over there. Let's give it a look real quick. Again, for Fantasy Draft and FanDuel, these are non-late swap sites. So we do have a little bit of news that you have to kind of worry about in the later games, but not a whole lot, which is good. You know, we got LeBron James and Anthony Davis are both questionable. I can't see LeBron James skipping a Christmas Day slate. I just can't. I can see maybe Anthony Davis taking it off, but I still think they both play. But those are decisions you have to make when you play on Fantasy Draft or FanDuel and these sites that don't late swap. Because, you know, each game on Christmas starts and they're just single. It starts at noon Eastern time, and the last game, you know, starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. So it's all day, one game at a time. And that Lakers game don't start till 8 hours after the first game locks. So you're not going to know this. But I do think LeBron James plays. And these are decisions you're going to have to make. Luckily, the early game, we already know that Siakam, Gasol, Powell are all out like they have been. So we kind of can see what they've been doing with Boston. And then on the Boston side, Marcus Smart is doubtful with an eye infection, and Hayward is questionable with a foot. That's the first game of the slate, so we're going to know the Hayward news. And then we know Bledsoe is out for Milwaukee. And then we have Patrick Beverley is questionable for the Clippers. So really the only thing we have is, besides that, is Glenn Robinson is questionable. He was out last night for Golden State. And again, that game starts at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, again, we won't know about that until after lock as well. So, I just wouldn't really worry about Glenn Robinson, playing him regardless. But the big one is LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I still think they're going to play. But, again. Now, another thing. On FanDuel, they got, you know, a $12.25 entry. For $200K up top, you got to beat 97,000 entries to win that $200K. And on DraftKings, they got a $25 entry for $1 million up top, and you got to beat 117,000 entries on that one. But over here on Fantasy Draft, for $25, you can win $5,000 up top, and you only got to beat 1,600 entrants. So your odds are much better over here if you're thinking about playing a GPP. Again, it's always nice to play. It's always nice to play a GPP that you have more of a shot at winning. Realistically, winning that FanDuel and DraftKings tournament, you got to get really funky, like extremely funky, if you're going to win that. There's a lot of teams, and you really have to find some gems in those things. Where more in Fantasy Draft, you can build just a good all-around team. You don't have to get too funky, and you have a real good shot at winning that here. So let's just dive into it here a little bit. Again, we're going to know about the Gordon Hayward news if he's going to play, because again, this is a first game of the slate here with the Celtics at Toronto. It's a 213.5 over under with Boston favored by 2.5. Now Toronto, with all these injuries, they haven't been the best defensive team, because I mean, when you have a Gasol, Siakam, Powell, all those guys out, it really changes. So all the numbers are not going to really match up to what they really are now. They've really struggled. They've come back in some games, but they've got down like in a hurry. I mean, they've really had to claw themselves back, and that second unit's been helping them a ton. But it's been kind of ugly for them, which they're going to struggle until they get those guys back. But let's talk about the Boston side here first. Now, if Hayward were to sit, that's a bump to Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Walker, all those guys. I don't suspect Smart is going to play regardless. So I think Walker is a good play regardless if Gordon Hayward goes. If Gordon Hayward plays, it does knock them all down a titch, but it really hurts Jaylen Brown for me. I just kind of muddles this whole team up. You know, we can talk about, you know, Daniel Theis down there. You know, Tice is 7,600. You know, he's playable over here on Fantasy Draft. We're gonna probably need some value if you're gonna want to get some of these studs in the lineup. You know, on these Christmas Day slates, you know, these studs want to show out. You know, so he is good value on this slate. And again, Toronto's not the same defensive team right now. So if I was looking for a value piece on this Boston side, it would definitely be Daniel Theis. But for me, it all hinges around Hayward. If he were to sit, I would have some interest in Jaylen Brown. That's too cheap at 12-2. Same with Tatum and Walker. Not must pieces. This is one of the lowest. This is the lowest over-under of the slate. It's a close game, but any one of these guys can go off. I probably wouldn't run Jaylen Brown with Kemba Walker. I probably won't run one or the other if Hayward were to sit. I don't see them both going off because they score. But that's really it. You know, I don't see any, like, you know, if you want to get really funky, if Hayward were out, I guess you could look at like a Brad Wanamaker. If we're talking about just like trying to get a little funky on a team and, you know, seeing if you're going to take down one of the big tournaments, that might be one of those funky plays on this team. But you'd have to be playing 150 lineups in one of those other contests for me to even take a shot at like a Wanamaker. Over at Fantasy Draft, I wouldn't do it. I would stick to the Theis, Brown, Tatum, and Walker. Over on the Raptors, again, we have a bunch of people out, right? So they have short rotations. They don't have a whole lot. People are going to play a ton of minutes. So Fred VanVleet at 13-1 is way too cheap. Way too cheap. He's the best value on Toronto over here at Fantasy Draft. He'd be one of the first guys I would plug in here. He's got to do it all. I mean, he's come back off of injury and played a couple games, but we're just seeing the amount of minutes that he's playing. You know, he played 41 minutes last night. Again, get a day of rest here on Christmas Eve, and I just, you know, with the minutes that this dude's gonna play, he's one of the best values on the slate, in my opinion, and he's one of my favorite plays. Just, again, they are really, 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 really thin. You know, Kyle Lowry, again, is going to play a ton of minutes. These guys are going to have to score. You know, it's basically Lowry, VanVleet, Ibaka. But the price savings you get on VanVleet, I would probably rank him VanVleet, Ibaka, Lowry. And that's just because of just their price. OG's been starting at the 4. He's 10-1. Don't really love that matchup against Tatum. Just you know, they might have to go big. We saw a little bit against Indiana when they had last night against Sabonis, where they brought in and played maybe a little bit of Rondae Hollis-Jefferson or Boucher against Sabonis. So they might do that a little bit, but Boucher at 9.4, you're not getting a discount there. I don't love that price at all. Again, he's one of those guys that can just pop off at any time if he's given minutes. He put up almost a 40-plus burger a couple games ago. So, again, in these big fields on FanDuel and DraftKings, look at guys like Boucher, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson that have massive upside but have extremely low floors. I think Rondé Hollis-Jefferson's floor is way higher than Boucher's. 10-9's, I guess, it's a little expensive over here on Fantasy Draft. Over here I would just rather play OG. Again, Hollis-Jefferson's not bad. If they're going to have to go big, they'll probably use him first. He played some decent minutes last night. Ended up coming on strong. Played 37 minutes, put up 34 fantasy draft points. So I have no problem using Rondé Hollis-Jefferson. I think he'll be one of the lower-owned guys. But I'm not going to get too cute here with, like, Terrence Davis. You could look at him, 7-2. Again, not so much for me on fantasy draft. This would be more of a FanDuel DraftKings play where you're looking to get a little bit funky. And he'd be about the only other piece besides Boucher. I really have no interest in Patrick McCall. They've been starting him at the 3, and he just doesn't get it done. He's a .50 fantasy point per minute kind of guy. Usage is extremely low on this team. As Van Fleet and Lowry hold all the usage. Just a guy can't get around at all. So I'd rather take a chance on a Terrence Davis than I would a Patrick McCall. So, but Fred Van Fleet, Serge Ibaka, Lowry, those are the main targets you're looking at. And then OG and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson are kind of your secondary pieces. With Terrence Davis and Boucher are kind of like your YOLO. Let's take a shot. Hey, father of 3. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you and your family as well. It's a good time of year. Good time of year. Let's head on over to this Bucks Philly game. 220.5 over under. Philly favored by 1. Again, the big piece of news that we had here was just Eric Bledsoe is out. So we're probably still going to see, where's he at? DiVincenzo is probably going to continue to have the start here with George Hill off the bench. Again, Christmas Day slate, Giannis, 20K. You can never, Giannis is always going to be in play. It's what stud do you want to play? Because we got a ton of them on the slate. We got Giannis, we got Harden, we got Westbrook, we got LeBron James, we got Anthony Davis. Now, if you were worried about those questionable tags and you wanted to play a stud, this is where you can look at just saying, hey, I'll play Giannis here and not have to worry about those guys that are questionable just to get my piece. I think Giannis is going to try to show out here. Again, the matchup, it's the third highest over-under. Again, close spread. They're all kind of close spreads except for Houston, Golden State, and then Denver, New Orleans. I'm okay with playing him, but I think I'd rather go Chris Middleton at 12-2. That price is just way too cheap. I think there's more value there. No problem playing Giannis on the slate. I think if you're going to play Giannis here, you want to play someone on the other side on Philly. Tobias Harris just went off last night. I think he put up a 50 burger on FanDuel. So there's other pieces we can look at. Brook Lopez at 9'6" is a little interesting here. They're probably going to need his size, him and his brother, up against Embiid. But again, he can get it going behind the arc and pay that price tag. DiVincenzo at 10.7. His price has creeped up to a point I would much rather play Middleton. But, he's had some decent games. But at that price here in fantasy draft, not someone that I can just, go all in and want to play a ton of. George Hill, I'd rather take a chance on him at 8.5. He's just a much better price. And they've been splitting, those point guard minutes. Hill's playing 22-24 where, DiVincenzo's playing, 27, 28 minutes. So, we all know where the production is going to come with this team. It's Giannis and Middleton, and then all the rest of the guys are just kind of helping out where they can. I guess if you're going to get a little funky, maybe you could look at like a Wesley Matthews or an Ilyasova. with no other injuries on this team. That's, we won't see Ilyasova starting again when Wes Math was out. So I think you'd really just stick with Middleton, Giannis, and then maybe a Brook Lopez or George Hill here. Again, DiVincenzo's definitely a secondary play at that price. And again, playing the Sixers, you're going to want to run. If you're going to run Middleton, say you want to run Middleton out there, I would look at someone on the other side. So again, over here on the Philly side, and Joel Embiid's 18-1. I think he'll be pretty low owned on this slate overall because people are going to want to pay up for the Giannis's. I don't think lineup construction is going to kind of push people towards playing a Joel Embiid. But maybe that's where you get a little different. You're going to want to get different on the slate. Again, if you want the top prize, again, Tobias Harris at 12.5 just stands out again. He just absolutely went off. I like these cheaper pieces for Philly. Tobias Harris is, 1.05 fantasy point per minute. He's going to continue to see 34, 35 minutes. And he's got 40, 50 point upside like he showed last night. And so he plays a ton of minutes. It's him and Simmons basically lead the team in minutes. Embiid, it always comes down to minutes for him. Yeah, he's a 1.53 fantasy point producer, and his usage is over 30%. But for me, it always comes down to minutes he's going to play. It's Christmas Day. Brook Lopez has nothing for Embiid, but they're still a good defensive team. If I was looking to play in one lineup, I probably wouldn't have him. But if I was playing a bunch of them, just at low ownership, I think I would have a piece. But it's really, for me, it's Al Horford 11.7 and Tobias Harris at 12.5. I think Tobias Harris is going to be more popular with that big game he put up last night. But at that price, the minutes that he plays, Horford's only averaging around 30 minutes a game, or Harris is around 34. They're both around about the same fantasy point per minute kind of player, but the usage is around 24% for Harris. So if I was going to run a guy out there, it would be Tobias Harris on this team. Ben Simmons, I have a hard time paying $14.7 for Ben Simmons as long as his team's completely healthy. Josh Richardson's a little bit interesting at 12.3. I still think, when you look at the whole slate as a whole, I'd much rather play a Chris Middleton at 12.2 than a Josh Richardson at 12.3. I think that's just a little pricey for him. He's only about a 0.87 fantasy point per minute kind of guy. Low 20s usage rate. Minutes are, low 30s. It's really hard to get excited about playing a guy like that. So, and on this team, I don't see any sneaky plays that we can kind of look at to try to take down the big tournaments. They're pretty straightforward when they're healthy. It's just those starting five. And I would, again, focus more on the Harris and Horford, with Harris being my favorite guy. Let's head on over to Houston at Golden State. Now, when NBA set the 82-game schedule, I'm sure they were not happy when Curry went down, because Golden State, this is a ridiculous game. This is a 228.5 over-under with Houston favored by 10. Now, they just didn't expect it. There's no way that they would have this. I wish there was a way that they could flex games that are, so we have competitive games on every slate. Because right now we basically have two games that are not going to be that competitive, in my opinion. And neither, Vegas doesn't think as well. And it's this one, Houston at Golden State. And then it's the hammer game where we have New Orleans going to Denver, which that ain't going to end well. But this is what we got. This is the hand we're dealt. I just wish they would do something with it, maybe change it up a little bit. But again, on the Houston side, price that stands out is Russell Westbrook at 16.2. You're saving well over $4K over the 20,700 James Harden. And Westbrook has been on a pretty good clip lately. Now, he's been a 1.34 fantasy point per minute kind of guy. His usage, not the 40% James Harden is, but he's still coming at 35%. We know all the usage goes through both of these guys. He's playing heavy minutes still, averaging around 34, 35 minutes a game. but he's putting up some great scores lately. Last night he put up 47. Before that, 54 against Phoenix, 59 against the Clippers, 51 against the Spurs. You'll take, in the 50s all day long at this price point. So he is probably a core play for me over on fantasy draft. He's someone that I'd probably build around, even if they get out. D'Antoni has no problem running his guys out there and just pushing the score up. Like, he don't pull his guys very often. If you ever watched any of the Rockets games, like he will just run them out there. So have a lot of love for Westbrook here. Again, Harden always in play, but 20 G's for him. I think I'd rather play one of the more competitive games. Like, I'd rather play a Giannis or I'd rather play a LeBron James than I would a Harden. So I think I would rather get my exposure to this game through Westbrook. Now, Tucker at 8'6", he's always a little interesting, but I don't think, I like playing him in games that they need him. Daniel House, 6'8". Now, that is a cheap price if you're looking for a cheap play. He has upside at this price tag. He plays a ton of minutes. He's only a .72 fantasy point per minute, but he's playing mid-30s in minutes. So the usage really isn't there. But at 6'8", I have no problem plugging him in as well, because even if this thing gets out of control, he's still going to be out there. He just gives you a little value. Capella at 13.8. Not really excited about that price tag, but he should be able to dominate anyone there at Golden State. So if I was looking at playing, these guys, maybe pair up Westbrook and Capella and then kind of leave Harden off here. That's just an expensive price tag for him. He's 11.7 over at FanDuel. And see what he is at DraftKings here. Yeah, Harden's 11.6 on DraftKings, and he's 11.7 on FanDuel. So, yeah, it's Westbrook for me on the slate. And again, that's the whole team. They don't. All these other guys, Rivers, Clark, Cephalosha, no thanks. There's just nobody else on this team. Ben McLemore, no thanks. They play their guys heavy minutes, and that's it. So, again, House, Westbrook, probably my favorite two plays on fantasy draft here. Let's head on over to the Golden State side, which has been a dumpster fire. Again, no Curry. Glenn Robinson, I'm just assuming he's going to sit. Everything's to be going through D-Russ. D-Russ is 13.9. I still think he can get his here. He's a 1.22 fantasy point per minute. Again, when he is playing, he's got all the usage on this team. He's around 33% usage. But the one guy that's been balling out lately is Alec Burks, man. He moved into the starting lineup for Glenn Robinson. He's been coming off the bench generally, but had a massive game last night. Put up a 40. He put up a 40 burger 2 games ago. He ended up putting a 50 burger up last night. Actually, 48.5 fantasy draft points in 34 minutes. So he's been extremely consistent, and this price tag is way too cheap on him. And if I was going to get a piece of this, I think Burks is going to play regardless. I would much rather look at playing Burks over a Russell. Draymond Green, 11.8. I have a hard time playing Draymond. Draymond's only been a 1 fantasy point per minute player this year. He's just, they have nothing to play for. They just don't, it's hard to play guys that, like, I just think that, I think they've won 10 games all year. They want to get him a draft pick. Maybe they get a lottery selection. They're going to be competitive as hell next year when they get Curry and those guys back. And it's just, they're just kind of going through the motions. This is all the young guys are getting run. They're not going to push Draymond out there. 11.8, he's playable, but not someone that I'm looking to play. I would much rather play Burks, a guy that's hungry, that wants to show that he can, belongs in this league, that he can score. Guys that are going to be playing for a team, playing for a paycheck. Draymond knows he's going to be around. He ain't going anywhere. So don't have a whole lot of interest there. And then Damian Lee at 10-3. It's a little expensive over here on Fantasy Draft, but he's been playing pretty well in that starting lineup. You know, usage is around 20 minutes, 20%. You know, playing 25, 27 minutes. You can push it up to 30 at times. If this game you think kind of can get out of control, this is where you can kind of maybe get a little different in tournaments. If you think Houston really pushes it on him, and then Kerr wants to just play a lot of his bench, you know, Kerr can play a ton of guys. Like, that's the thing. There's not a tight rotation on this team. If they end up putting it on him, you know, D-Russ wouldn't be in play. I'd still like Burks, but you can look at guys like Pascal at 8K. You know, guys like Pascal can get some run. Marquise Chris 7-2. Again, very interesting. This is when you're playing, you're building this lineup as you think that, you know, Golden State's going to get blown out. So you're not going to have a Draymond Green or a Russell in this lineup. You're going to have some of these secondary, tertiary pieces of Chris, Pascal. I think those are my favorite. You could kind of look at a Spellman or an Evans or Poole, but I don't think they're going to put up the numbers you want. You know, Chris has been a 1.11 fantasy point per minute. If the game gets out of control, he might see 25. And then maybe he can 4X this price tag. Pascal, he's been a 0.86 fantasy point per minute. So maybe he sees 30, or, you know, if they get down early in the first half. But I would think Chris would be the one that if they really get smashed, we've seen his upside when he gets minutes. So he's the guy that I would kind of take a chance on in those large field GPPs. So let's head on over to probably going to be one of the funner games on this, the one that everyone's looking forward to seeing. And that's the Clippers at the Lake Show. 223.5 over under, with the Lakers favored by 1. With them being favored by 1, that just kind of tells me that I think both of them are going to play. At least one, but both of them. I think AD and LeBron James are going to play here. So let's look at the Clippers side first. Again, when Kawhi and Paul George are both out there, they're actually priced pretty nicely here. And Paul George at 15K, Kawhi Leonard at 15.8. I think they're going to kind of get lost in the shuffle with people paying up for studs. And I have no problem playing either one of them. I don't think I would play both of them in the same lineup at this price. I would play one or the other. I think you can, but I would kind of lean more Paul George here. I think maybe Kawhi, you know, uses more of his energy on the defensive side of the ball to try to control LeBron James a little bit. I like the Paul George side. Montrezl Harrell at 10-7 is really interesting. He's been doing a lot of good things off the bench. You know, pairing him up with Lou Will 11-7 is kind of nice. If you don't want to go the Kawhi or PG-13 route. And again, we have Patrick Beverley questionable here. So if he were to sit, it doesn't do a whole lot for me here. It doesn't move the needle. Zubac at 7-1. He just doesn't see the minutes, man. He's a 1.15 fantasy point per minute, but he only averages 17 minutes this season. And so it's really hard to maybe they need his size to go up against, you know, the Lakers here, but that's where I think, you know, they just bring Harrell in, and you know, the bigs are pretty athletic for the Lakers, and McGee and Howard. So I think Harrell's probably my favorite point per dollar play out of this team at 10-7. I mean, that just kind of stands out as a play you could slide in here. Again, no problem with Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. I lean Paul George, but this game should be a lot of fun. Definitely one of the better games on the slate. And again, we're looking for low-end pieces. This is not the team to do it. Everything kind of flows through Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Harrell. I mean, I guess the one guy you could look at is maybe Mo Harkless at 6,100. That is kind of a price that stands out a little bit, but it's hard for me to play a lot of Harkless with Paul George and Kawhi playing. But at 6'1", there is some meat left on the bone there. He's just a very low usage player, 10% usage, 0.65 fantasy points per minute for the year. But he does average around 23, 24 minutes. So he can get that 3x mark. So I guess that'd be one guy I would look at playing. Maybe Jermichael Green, if you're looking for just a low-owned dart. But he needs the minutes. He's a higher fantasy point per minute player than Harkless is, but he doesn't get the minutes that Harkless does. But he would be interesting. Over on the Lake Show, it's all about Anthony Davis and LeBron James, right? I think they're going to play. If you're going to play one piece of this, if you're going to play a Kawhi Leonard or a Paul George, I would really look at playing one of LeBron James or Anthony Davis. This game is supposed to be close. I kind of lean, Anthony Davis, but any one of these guys can go off, and they're so close in salary. I think if I built a lineup that I liked with LeBron James in, I would come back in that same lineup and I would just play Anthony Davis in it. Just because I think one of them's going to go off. That's just pinpointing which one in this matchup. McGee, Howard, they don't get enough minutes for me, because they just can run AD down at the 5. So it's hard to play these guys when McGee only gets like 16 minutes, 17 minutes. He's only averaging just shy of 17 minutes a game. Howard's only averaging just shy of 20 minutes a game. So it's really hard to, play either one of these guys. They have massive upside, but usually it's one if Anthony Davis or LeBron James are out. But when they're playing, and that's maybe a chance you want to take, though. Maybe you think one of them sits. Excuse me. I don't. And then you got national television game Rondo. We all know about that. He's only averaging about 22 minutes a game. But on a big, when he's on the stage, you have to look at a Rondo at 8-7. There's massive upside there. Again, he's coming off the bench, but anytime we're playing on a big stage like this, you have to put Rondo into consideration. And then there's nothing. Avery Bradley at 6K is pretty interesting. If he slides in that starting lineup, 25 minutes, he's only a .63 fantasy point per minute kind of guy. 15% usage, which is not great at all. But if his shot starts falling at 6K, we're talking bare minimum, I have no problem going there at all. But he's got a really low floor. Danny Green at 7.2. He plays minutes. He's a little bit better at .74 fantasy point per minute. But again, you're just kind of hoping, Kuzma, Kuzma at 7.4. This is where he could be interesting. I'd rather play Kuzma than I would Howard or McGee because, again, they can run AD down to 5 pretty easily on this team with Kuzma at the 4. So with them completely healthy, it's going to be a fun game to watch, but not a game that you're going to be able to get a lot of pieces in with the prices that they are. So I would just kind of mix and match some of these guys. Like I said, I like Harrell on the Clipper side, and if I had to pick one guy, again, you got to get funky on this slate. I would look at like a Rondo or Kuzma, I think, on this side. Again, AD, LeBron James all day long. But for these other pieces, it'd be Rondo, Kuzma, and then if you wanted a 6K guy, it's Avery Bradley. Everybody else I wouldn't really touch. Again, let's go to the hammer game. Hammer game. For that, Week 17 NFL. Fantasy Draft, bringing it back. $100,000 guaranteed rake-free contest, the Hooters main event. It's the largest and only rake-free contest of its kind you'll find. And remember, only at fantasydraft.com are 100% of your entry fees paid to contest winners. Sign up at fantasydraft.com with referral code CHIEFST, and you'll get a free 7-day trial membership. Can't beat it. Can't beat rake-free, man. So let's head on the hammer game. The hammer. Yeah, the hammer game. Of course, it's the Pelicans going to Denver. 219.5 over under. Second lowest on the slate with Denver favored by 10. I don't see how the Pelicans are going to win this game going into Denver. I just don't. Again, I don't know why this slate or this game is on this slate. I guess the thought when they made this schedule is Zion would be playing. He's been out all season. So I'm assuming that's why they thought that they should put this game on it, because he's, number 1 overall pick. Yada, yada, yada. But not what they expected. Got a question here. West Coast Jim says, I'm thinking about going Monte. Yeah, there's Monte and Plum Dog, yeah. I mean, like you said, this game, if you think it's going to blow out, that's where you can kind of look at some of these pieces on the Denver side for sure, and maybe even the Pelican side. The Pelicans have been just running a bunch of people out there. With them kind of healthy, it's basically the Brandon Ingram show. So I have no problem running Brandon Ingram out there, but at 14-4, that is a little pricey. If this game's going to stay close, it's on the back of him and Drew Holiday. Favors is a little interesting, 11-2, but I just, Denver's a real good defensive team, and going into Denver, I really have a hard time thinking that they're going to pull this one out. I think I have more interest in Drew at 13-6, just at that price. Lonzo Ball at 8-6 is a little interesting. That's too cheap for him. Again, if you're going to think that this game kind of gets out of control and they play some of their bench guys, you can look at a Jackson Hayes. Again, this is you're building a lineup where you think that the Nuggets are going to take it to the Pels here. And then maybe you could look at an Alexander Walker if you think they're going to win. He ain't going to see no minutes unless this is a blowout. So keep that in mind 100%. But if they're going to keep it close, it's going to be on the back of, again, Drew. JJ Redick's going to have an awesome shooting performance. Brandon Ingram, Favors, all those guys. Kendrick Williams would be the one guy, another 6K guy over here at Fantasy Draft that you can look at, because I think he's going to play regardless if a blowout or not. And at 6K, he averages about 0.69 fantasy points per minute. Got a real low usage rate, but he plays about 25 minutes a game. And at 6K, he can make kind of things work. So I kind of like the Kendrick Williams if I was looking at a cheap guy down here. Again, Frank Jackson, Alexander Walker, these are all plays. Hayes are all plays only if this game you think is going to blow out. With Favors back in the fold, if you think it's close, that's when you look at playing Favors. You look at playing Redick, Ball, Holiday, Ingram. That's way too cheap on Ball, but man, there's something about that kid. I have a hard time rostering him. The minutes really aren't there. But that price at 8.6, he's got to be at least near player pull if you're playing multiple lineups. Let's see here. Well, let's just head on over to the final game here, the Nugs, man. Jokic, 17K. Yikes. That's a little pricey for me. And the game that I think it's not going to stay close, I don't want nothing to do with that. If you're going to spend 17K, you can get Russell Westbrook at 16-2, and I'd much rather play that where I know D'Antoni's going to play his guys. The guys to look at, though, on this that I have interest in, Will Barton at 12-1. These games that get up and down like this, just he flourishes in. Have a lot of interest in Will Barton here. Jamal Murray. I have a hard time playing Jamal Murray. 13-1's a little interesting. It's a good matchup. You want to attack. You can attack the Pelicans anywhere, but no problem playing him. Millsap at 9-1. Again, that's too cheap, but you want this game to stay close to play a guy like that. The interesting guys down here, like we talked about, or West Coast Jim brought up, was Plumlee. If this game's not going to Plumlee, and it was great. This is the hammer game. You plug in Plumlee as your center. If this game doesn't stay close and the Nuggets are just trashing the Pelicans, Plumlee is going to get a lot of run here. You could say the same. Jeremy Grant's going to get more run. Monte Morris will get a lot of run at 6K. He makes it interesting. Those are the pieces I would kind of look at. Morris. Maybe if you want to take a real deep dart throw on like a Michael Porter Jr., But Grant, Plumlee, those are the kind of guys I would look at. I wouldn't play a Jokic on this slate. Barton at 12-1, even if it gets out of control, he can still get there at that price tag. So have a lot of interest in that. And it's just not a game that I want a bunch of pieces from. And I think this is the game where you get funky. You know, it's your hammer game. You can kind of build your other pieces and just look to get funky here, man. Look to play a Grant or a Plumlee or a Morris. You know, Plumlee's in the rotation regardless, but he'll just get a few more minutes if they're really putting it to him. But with all those other guys, I'm not playing 17K for Jokic on this slate when we got LeBron James and AD for just a little bit more. It's kind of a stay away spot. In this lineup, that's kind of funny. He fits kind of perfect in this lineup construction that we're putting up here. If you wanted that one hammer piece like that, but I'm not sure I would play him in that. But yeah, it should be a fun slate again on Fantasy Drafting and FanDuel. You know, once that slate locks at noon on Eastern Standard Time, that's it. So when you're thinking about, I prefer to play on those sites on Fantasy Draft, on FanDuel, on Christmas, because your stuff locks, you're good to go. Like I said, the great thing about Fantasy Draft is you only got to beat 1,600 other entrants to win 5K. And on FanDuel, you're going after 97,000 entrants. And on DraftKings, 117,000 entrants. And on DraftKings, you're sitting there babysitting your lineups all day long. And if you have the time to do that, fantastic. But most of us that have families and kids, it's hard for us to do that. So build your FanDuel lineups, build your Fantasy Draft lineups, set them, enjoy the family, sit there and watch basketball all day. It's a fantastic slate. Got some great games. Can't wait to see the Clippers and Lakers game. That game should be awesome. Milwaukee at the Sixers should be fantastic. The rest of the three, not too excited to watch, but those two I'll definitely be trying to tune into to watch. And again, Christmas Day special for you guys that are not DFS Army members. 2 days. 50% off. Promo code Christmas. It's only today and tomorrow. Ends at midnight on Christmas Day. So 2 days, 50% off your first month VIP membership, 20% thereafter, and use promo code Christmas. Get in there. And with that, I wish everyone a very, very Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I will see you in Slack. Any questions, please reach out and ask. And I hope to see those helmets up top. Appreciate you guys. See you on the flip side. Deuces.